Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, especially for all you 8th grade scholars tuning in, we are stepping way back in time to one of the most epic, truly defining moments in all of American history. We're talking about a massive, literal collision of armies that shifted the entire destiny of a nation. So let's just dive right into this. We're going to explore the Battle of Gettysburg. It's widely known as the great turning point of the American Civil War, and we're going to break down the what, the why, and the how behind this absolutely monumental event. But to truly understand the sheer stakes of this history, we've got to get into the right mindset first. There's a quote that goes, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God goes with you." That's from Deuteronomy 31:6. Now you might be wondering, why start a history explainer with a Bible verse about courage? Well, because the men who marched onto that battlefield in the dead heat of the summer of 1863, they needed a profound, almost unimaginable level of courage. Setting the tone with this idea really anchors everything we're about to uncover. We are diving into a high-stakes, terrifying conflict where courage wasn't just an inspiring word, it was a literal requirement for survival. So that brings us to our core question. It's the big mystery we're going to unravel today. How in the world did just 3 days in a small Pennsylvania crossroads change the entire course of American history? I mean, think about that for a second. Entire wars can drag on for years and years without a clear resolution, yet the events of July 1st through the 3rd in 1863 completely flipped the script of the Civil War. We are going to plunge directly into this, figuring out exactly what went down over those 72 hours and why it mattered so much. To get it, you really have to understand the extreme stakes for both sides. It was a massive clash of strategic motivations. On one side, you have Confederate General Robert E. Lee. He wasn't just looking for another skirmish. He was actively seeking a major, decisive win up north, right in the heart of Union territory. Why? Because a victory there could completely turn the tide of the war, and crucially, it might convince European countries to officially support the Confederacy. Then, on the other side, you've got Union General George Meade. His mission is straightforward but desperately urgent. Defend Northern Territory at all costs and push this Confederate advance back. The tension here is just palpable. Both armies are barreling toward each other with literally everything on the line. So, as these two massive armies maneuver around each other, they eventually collide. But where? And more importantly, ask yourselves, why did Gettysburg's location matter? It wasn't the capital city. It wasn't some massive industrial center. I want you to think critically about geography for a moment. Why would this specific, relatively small, sleepy town become the site of the bloodiest battle of the Civil War? Well, here's the geographical why. The crucial point is that Gettysburg was a vital crossroads in Pennsylvania. Imagine a giant wheel with a bunch of spokes all meeting right in the middle. That middle was Gettysburg. Because all these roads intersected there, it was incredibly close to numerous critical supply routes and neighboring states. If the Confederate Army controlled this junction, they basically had a clear, paved path to spread further into the north. So holding this specific ground was absolutely essential for the Union if they wanted to protect the rest of the northern states. It's a perfect example of geography literally dictating where history gets made. Which brings us to the actual battle. Over 3 blistering days in July 1863, the momentum of the entire war just hung in the balance. Day 1, July 1st, actually started almost by accident. Scouting forces literally bumped into each other, and it escalated incredibly quickly into a massive fight, where Confederate forces initially pushed the Union troops right back through the town. But, crucially, the Union Army fell back and regrouped on high ground. Then we hit Day 2, July 2nd. This saw brutal, intense combat on the edges of the battlefield, places with names like Little Round Top and the Peach Orchard. The Union fiercely defended their high ground against relentless Confederate attacks. Both sides suffered immensely, but the Union line held. And then came Day 3. This was the climax of this horrific struggle, featuring a moment that would go down in infamy. The sheer desperation of that third day culminated in what we now call Pickett's Charge. I want you to really try and put yourself on that field for a second. General Lee ordered thousands of Confederate soldiers to march out of the tree line and cross roughly a mile of completely open field. A mile! They were marching directly toward the center of the Union line, totally exposed. It was an absolute disaster for the South. They were walking directly into heavy, continuous Union artillery and rifle fire. The result was just massive, devastating casualties. The charge failed, the survivors were forced to retreat, and General Lee's army was fundamentally broken right there. After 3 days of this brutal, exhausting combat, Lee's army had no choice but to retreat back to Virginia. And this brings us to the whole concept of a turning point. What does that actually mean in history?
Well, it's a decisive moment that fundamentally changes the trajectory of a war. Gettysburg permanently stopped the Confederacy's northern advance. It destroyed so much of General Lee's military strength that his army would literally never fully recover. And, just as importantly, it gave the Union a desperately needed boost in morale. Before Gettysburg, the North was weary, they were doubting if they could even win. But after Gettysburg, the Union began to truly believe that victory was possible.
But the story of Gettysburg doesn't just end when the guns stop firing. A few months later, the nation had to find some way to process the staggering loss of life. President Abraham Lincoln actually traveled to the battlefield to dedicate a cemetery for the fallen. And in just over 2 minutes, he delivered the Gettysburg Address. He reminded Americans exactly why this war was being fought in the first place: for freedom, equality, and a united nation. He took the immense, heartbreaking tragedy of that battlefield and elevated it, giving the whole country a renewed sense of purpose.
Lincoln's words at that cemetery ensured the nation remembered the higher purpose behind all of that terrible loss and sacrifice. It wasn't just about winning a military campaign anymore, right? It was about preserving democracy itself. That's where he famously said that the government, of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. This profound moment inspired the living. It proved that Gettysburg wasn't just a tactical military victory, but a massive emotional and ideological victory that forged a path forward for a reunited country.
All right, let's do a quick structured recap to make sure we've really locked in these core concepts. Consider this your homework check. Number 1, why was it a turning point? Simply put, it stopped Lee's northern advance and crippled his army. Number 2, what was Pickett's charge? A disastrous Confederate assault right across an open field. Number 3, how did geography shape it? Well, Gettysburg was a vital crossroads that the Union absolutely had to defend. Number 4, what was Lincoln's message? Honoring the fallen and continuing the fight for democracy and equality. And finally, number 5, why was morale so important? Because it finally gave the North the hope they desperately needed to keep fighting.
Now, as we wrap up our historical journey today, I want to bridge what we've discovered to our capstone philosophy here in the HeroesMart Academy Godly Learners series. We firmly believe in intertwining biblical morality with education. Why? Well, because, quite simply, education without morality is going to hurt. Think about it. You can know all the facts about history, you can memorize troop movements and geographical coordinates, but if you don't have a strong moral compass guiding how you use that knowledge out in the real world, what good is it? True education has to be anchored in strong moral values to actually benefit society. Think back to that courage we talked about at the very beginning of this explainer. That kind of steadfast, unbreakable courage comes from a deep inner grounding. As it says in Romans 8:6-7, there is a promise of peace of mind to everyone who keeps his or her mind spiritual. Connecting these incredible lessons of historical courage and sacrifice to this biblical promise shows us that keeping a spiritual, morally grounded mind brings true peace. It helps us navigate the crazy complexities of life, and honestly, this is the exact peace and understanding we hope you experience as you engage with this content and grow as learners. So, I want to leave you with this really powerful question to ponder as you go about your day. What is the point of being smart and supposedly educated if you just continue to make bad choices that hurt yourself or others? History is completely full of brilliant tacticians who lacked a moral compass, and it led to devastating consequences. So my challenge to you is this: take the incredible education you are receiving, combine it with strong, godly morality, and use it to make positive, courageous choices in your own life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep learning.